when we left things off on Sunday, we found God agreeing to partner with Israel at the foot of Mount Sinai. And that partnership included the incredible promise that God himself wouldn't just watch from heaven, but move in with his people. That part of the story serves as a reminder that God's ultimate goal wasn't a religion, but a relationship. It's a restoration of that relationship that was lost in the garden between God and humanity. And it's a reminder that we all need all the time. Jesus was once asked, out of all the many commands God gave, what was the most important command? And he said this in response: "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On those two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." Now that's not religion, is it? That's a relationship. He frames it and couches it in the metaphor and the symbolism of love, not simply obedience. God has loved us and chosen us, and he wants to move in our lives and be with us forever. In doing so, he's going to empower us to live out that life with him, to obey and listen, and to live a life, full of his life. We know that he loves us, but the question becomes, how well do we love him? Probably not as much as we hope, right? We're probably a lot like the Israelites were at the foot of the mountain. Because you see, just days after agreeing to partner with God, they broke their promise. They immediately broke the promise. They had built this golden calf and they worshiped it as a god. Just days later, just mere days later. Now, the writer does such a brilliant job of weaving this narrative together when you're reading through this account in Exodus, because when you're reading through it, you get to this part and you think, how could they be so stupid? How could they make a mistake like that just days after agreeing to live with and for God and to be his representatives to the nations? How could they say, oh, forget that God, we got this other one instead? And you think those things and you think, oh man, these guys are so dumb. But then you realize their story is your story. This is about every person, every generation struggling with that same relational problem. We're told exactly who God is, what he has done, and what he asks of us. We make great commitments and say, yes, I want to lean into that relationship. I need that in my life. And then within moments, we turn around and we mess up again. This moment in Israel's history is there to cause us to pause and to think about our history with God. And then to turn the page and to see God's response. You see, God, with divine justice, disciplined his people for their breaking of the promise. There was consequences, but he didn't break his word. He used their disobedience to show them his true character and purpose. That's always how God does it. He turns our evil for good, doesn't he? See, he calls Moses back up and he tells them one of the most pivotal sentences in the entire Bible, right here in Exodus chapter 34, verse 6 and 7. He says, the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, and Yahweh, Yahweh in the Hebrew here, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. You see, God's chief desire is to forgive and redeem. Do you notice how often he forgives? Thousands of generations. Thousands of generations. He loves to give mercy. That's his primary character. He loves to heal humble humans. He'll still execute justice when necessary, and thankfully he will, because there is lots of injustice and evil in our world, isn't there? He still will pass that sentence of judgment, yet he will still provide the means to rescue, to bless his enemies, to turn our evil for good. There will be many days when we don't understand how he can be so merciful and forgiving to a people that constantly turn away from him. But we should always be grateful for it, because that's our story. May his steadfast love draw us back to him every day and empower us to fulfill our commitment to love him and love others.